Hi, everyone, and welcome to the PreSales Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jack Cochran, the General Manager of PreSales Collective, and with me is my co-host, Matthew James. Welcome.
Hey, everyone. Hope you're really excited for today's episode. We're going to talk about a lot of interesting topics at our first ever LinkedIn Live.
LinkedIn Live. This is the first time we did the show live in front of a studio audience, so to speak, on LinkedIn. And we just finished recording that, and I had a lot of fun, Matthew, with that. I don't know how you felt about the show.
It was incredible. All I have to say for you people listening, you could be part of it next time. So I'll see you in 2 Tuesdays.
In 2 Tuesdays. It's every other week, just like the podcasts come out. These podcasts come out the following Monday. So if you listen to this when it comes out, the next episode is going to be on the 21st, January 21st, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. GMT. We're going to try and keep that every other week. You can find that on the PreSales Collective LinkedIn page. If you're not following that, go ahead and follow the page while you're there. But just while you're at it, go ahead and follow the page. But yeah, today we're talking all about what's coming up this next year with PreSales Collective. What are the hot topics within pre-sales in general? And I'm really excited for you all to hear the episode. Matthew, any other final thoughts before we hop to the show?
Let's jump right in.
Let's jump right in right after the break. Today's episode is sponsored by PreSales Collective Unlimited. That's right, the PSC is sponsoring its own podcast. Unlimited is a new plan for our enablement courses. Now, if you're guessing that Unlimited provides you with unlimited access to our enablement courses, then you're right. You get access to all of our live courses, regular reinforcement roundtable discussions, guest workshops, and our complete video course library. You can get unlimited licenses for your whole pre-sales team or for yourself. For your team, you get that to ensure that everyone has the training they need to be world-class solutions consultants. And yes, your whole team can all sign up for one of our classes at the same time. It makes enabling and onboarding your team so much easier. If you've never checked out PSC's enablement courses before, they provide industry-leading content created by pre-sales professionals for pre-sales professionals, covering the full spectrum from discovery to pre-sales management. Reinforcement is built into every course, and we provide globalized coverage for wherever your teams are located. Head over to presalescollective.com/programs to find out more and get in touch with us today. Now, on to the episode. But this show is a little bit different today as we kind of kick things off. Normally, it'd be Matthew and I hosting, having a guest on here. Actually, we've got, I think at this point, probably 6 or 7 guests lined up for our next shows already. So I think plans are already in the works for what's coming. But today, it's just Matthew and I, because while I got a chance to join the previous podcast episode with, well, I suppose we had a little teaser in there in between, but the last full episode, I joined Chris Mabry when I was just coming into the GM role, and he was leaving the PreSales Collective. Now, I brought in Matthew James as the co-host. We talked about this in a little teaser episode, but I did want to give it a couple chances just for everyone to get to know you a little bit, your connection to the PreSales Collective if people don't know you yet. And also, we'd love to hear a little bit about what you're looking forward to in 2025 as at the topic.
Well, thanks again, Jack. It's a pleasure to be co-hosting this with you. I've been an avid listener of the PreSales podcast for about 3 years. I've listened to it, like I said, on our little preview show, I think in at least 4 to 5 gyms across the world. That includes my local home Equinox, just a couple of blocks away. It also includes a gym at a hotel in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where my mom's side of the family is from. So this is really like coming full circle.
You're making it an international podcast listening experience all on your own.
Which I think is one of the most exciting things about PreSales Collective as a whole anyway. If you know anything about me, you'll also know that I have ties to London. So that's why I had to shout out the EU. I expect to be seeing a lot of people in London at some point over the next year. So let's make this truly global community everything that it can be. Really, really excited about that. So a little more about me and my involvement in the PreSales Collective. I owe a lot to my friend and fellow solutions engineer, Andrew Rowe, who is usually based in New York, but is now actually in your time zone, Jack. So once again, we are all over the map. He introduced me to the PreSales Collective in 2021. We had a chance to do the Demo Days demo competition 2 years in a row. Our team name was Pitch Slapped, and I think we made it to the semifinals.
Nice. I love the name.
It was a great name. It was a great competition. And I hear that there are people out there in the world of pre-sales who keep talking about demo competitions too. So whether that's PSC or whether it's out there in the world in 2025, I look forward to seeing something happen. I've been involved as a pre-sales ambassador for the last 2 years. And this year, I have the exciting opportunity to be a regional community leader as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and for anyone who didn't see that announcement come out yesterday, we are relaunching our local PSC chapters. In the past, it's been something that's been more organic around just, hey, if you want to start something, we can spin up a local channel for you in Slack. You can try and organize things. And those events still happen, but they lack a little bit of the oomph of when things are a little bit more organized, more support of PreSales Collective as a whole. And so we wanted to bring what we do here around webinars, around this type of a show, around events, around dinners and networking, and everything else that we've done in that experience. We wanted to bring that to the local communities, and our regional community leader program is the way that we're doing that. And Matthew is our first New York regional community leader, but I doubt will be the only New York community leader for very long, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. And look, we have a lot of people tuning in from New Jersey, so maybe we can do a little double up there.
Yeah. The nice thing about this is that while we just launched with 6 cities, I think we have 3 or 4 more that are almost ready to go. We're just talking to people about it right now. I've had actually since yesterday have had people chatting with me about different cities that they're involved in that they want to launch. This thing is going to go nuts very quickly as far as different cities being added. So if there's enough people here from New Jersey, which I'm looking at the chat, there very well might be, then let's start one that's just specifically New Jersey, some part of whatever you're in, if wherever you'd want to centralize around that and kick off some events. But you mentioned London before when we were just welcoming everyone here to the show, that London's one city that I'm sure will be launching very soon. I'm sure some stuff in San Francisco, more stuff on the West Coast closer to me will probably be happening very soon as well. So if you are interested in that, it's something, definitely reach out to me. Reach out to Courtney as well. Hit us up on Slack or on LinkedIn, and let's get something going. Let's get this local community thing off the ground and kind of bring the PreSales Collective out of the digital world exclusively and more into your town. Let's make this something you can go to and meet with people, which is, I think, what most of us want at some level, at least.
Well, here's a question for you, Jack. Have you ever been to a pre-sales event in Las Vegas, in your home city?
Usually I've been to things that are connected to conferences, but I tried to launch one, and I think the happy hour had me and one other person, which is fine. I think there's less than 100 members of the PreSales Collective in Las Vegas. We're just not a very big town yet, but I would love to, yeah. I'd love at some point to do some type of event here in Las Vegas, but it's tough. Because with the stuff with conferences, normally, as we all know, if I'm traveling to a conference, I'm probably booked for networking events and dinners. And I've been all day on the trade floor doing demos. And I don't really want to go to some other event in the evening. I need some time to relax and get off my feet.
Every minute that I'm not standing at the booth or eating dinner with a client, I'm in my room with my Theragun on my feet.
Pretty much. That's about right. Now, you need food, but also you can get food delivered to your room, and that's usually the way to go.
On the company's dime, of course. I'm not paying $50 for a burger.
Yeah. That's a nice thing. Everyone always realizes with Vegas, people are like, hey, you've always got great food there in Las Vegas. It's like, yes, I do have great food here. But a lot of the great food's really expensive, and it's not priced for locals to go eat at regularly. It's priced for people here who are on vacation, who aren't thinking about the cost of their food, or they're like, it's Vegas, I'll spend the money. Or it's for people on expense budgets. And it's like, I'm neither of those two living here. But yeah.
Well, a little bit about what we've had in New York. I think probably the top events that I have seen in the pre-sales New York community. Some holiday mixers put on by Solutions Engineers of New York. So excited maybe to do a team up at some point in the year or something similar. And we've had some amazing PreSales Collective dinners, which I think would be an amazing thing to keep going and really bring into this local chapter, because I feel like every time we get these amazing PreSales leaders or PreSales individual contributors around the table, we finally have the chance to talk about all the things that we've been feeling all year. And I just saw Chris May reposted about this. A huge topic was, where are your PreSales people sitting in the org? And what does that mean for you? What are the pains that you feel, and what are the things that almost get alleviated for you? And you have this sales, you have this marketing, you have this product thing. I feel very lucky to be sitting underneath our sales organization with our own dedicated pre-sales leadership, but not everyone is in that situation. We get to kind of trade back and forth. That was an amazing conversation, and I hope to have many more this year.
Yeah, and I think the regional community program is going to make that a lot easier, right? Whether that's through an event the PreSales Collective is throwing as an official primary PreSales Collective event in your town, or it's something that's actually a dinner or a networking event that's being thrown by you or by one of our other community leaders. We're going to have more of that this year, and more chances to swap stories, to hear best practices. A big thing that I want for those is a couple things. I want everyone to be able to feel like they can show up and not feel like it's something that they're not going to be welcome at. So, a lot of people don't drink, or a lot of people aren't comfortable going out to have drinks, where that's the primary thing. And so making it where it's more welcoming for everyone, regardless of how you feel about that, as well as you should feel like you're going to go to something, and not every time, but you're going to go and take something away from it, as opposed to just, I'm going to go out and drink with these people I don't know, or eat with these people I don't know. I'm going to go and, yes, connect with people, have some food, have some fun and laughs, but also there's going to be something I'm going to learn and take away that's immediately applicable to my job or my team or me personally, even, because we all have friends. I like going out to eat and drink with my friends. So I don't necessarily need to go out and eat and drink with strangers. But if I can go out, meet with other people who do what I do, who understand what I do, because none of my friends or family do, and at the same time learn something from it, hey, that's an event I want to go to.
This is a big takeaway. The first dinner that happened in 2024, we got some feedback, and the feedback was we wanted to spend even more time on those pre-sale specific topics. And so for the budding regional community leaders in the chat right now, and for me, that takeaway, the opportunity to actually get to those topics quickly and leave with something that you've learned for yourself or your team, that should be something that we're all aiming for. It almost sounds like it's obvious, but I think you're right, Jack. We've all got friends. We've got people that we want to go out to dinner with. If we're going to take the time to make this a networking event, let's actually network and get something good for our careers out of it.
Absolutely.
And I guess on that, you have something on this document that I'm looking at that you might want to mention as well, because maybe there's some other place we might get some takeaways in 2025.
So I'm going to give a little bit of a teaser. I know what you're pointing at, a little bit of a teaser, because the announcement's not officially coming out until next week, to which I will say, subscribe to the newsletter, which I had posted about on LinkedIn. If you're not already yet, be in the Slack, because next week we're announcing something really special for any pre-sales leaders who are listening to the show or who are here on PreSales Live. We're going to be having some conferences, some leader-specific in-person conferences this year that you don't want to miss out on. Because just like the dinners, what we didn't want to do was have these in-person conferences where you show up and you just get all excited about being together, and then you leave and you go, I remember being there, but I don't remember anything we talked about. These are going to be really tactical. There's going to be some hands-on workshops, things that you're going to be able to walk away from these conferences going, I can immediately take this and apply this to my team or to my company or to what I do. It's going to be worth your time. I can't guarantee it, but I would almost guarantee it's going to be worth your time and something that you don't want to miss.
I'm excited. And it sounds like we have this unspoken commitment that this is not just some conference where you go and you think it's, okay, what a great time, but we are saying that you're going to learn something and it's going to make the rest of your year better.
Yeah, that's been our goal from the start. We want to do a conference, but how do we make it something that is different from other things out there? And one of the main tenets was this has to be tactical. This has to provide tactical practices and ideas that can be immediately applied. And so we're being very curated, I guess is the best way to put it, about the sessions, where this is the topic we're presenting on, and finding people who want to present into those topics, as opposed to come and present your thing. That's kind of the Demo Fest mode, which is fine. That's how they do it. And I love going to Demo Fest. I'm going to be there next month, actually, on the West Coast. You go there because you're getting everyone bringing their own ideas. This is more of, hey, these are the topics that we've heard that we think are going to be important to you, and finding people who can speak into those topics. You're going to get a very cohesive experience.
And you know what? Make sure you take some of that inspiration from DemoFest, because I still remember one of the presentations from DemoFest New York 2 years ago, and it was from a medical device company where they created a walkthrough of the entire patient experience. And the point of this talk was, how can you take your product and really bring it to life? Not just put it on a screen and bring it to life with your voice, but almost let your customers, literally in this case, walk through what's happening. And I think that changed the way they were selling it. Has stuck with me for 2 years. Look, I haven't had the chance to actually walk one of my customers through our Excel sheets because I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that looks like. But I have gone to a conference, pulled out an iPad, and instead of saying, all right, I'm going to explain this to you, I spin the iPad around and then do this nice thing where you slide it across the table and you use that tactility. You just really milk that, slowly slide the iPad over and you say, take a look at that. And then I go through this like a quiz, asking them a couple of questions about it. And that really changed the game for me.
Yeah. And I love that. But very key there, you heard something that was tactile you can immediately apply, and you applied it. I want to make sure that anything that you are coming to within our conference has that same feeling of, here's something you can walk away with out of something that you've heard. And so I'm very excited about that. But I can't talk too much more about that, or I'm going to give everything away. So you have to stay tuned for the full details that's coming out next week. And if you're listening on the show, it's probably coming out, I think, the week of this show airing, if you're listening to the podcast. So definitely stay tuned for that. It'll be coming very soon. Very excited for that. Let's talk a little bit about this show. So it's a little bit of almost an identity crisis, because we're right here. We're on PreSales Live right now, the live LinkedIn show, seeing lots of things happening in the chat. So thank you, everyone. We are going to be doing some Q&A towards the end of it. So that's a little bit of a difference between, if you're listening to this as the PreSales podcast, you're not going to get that live Q&A at the end, but you can listen to this in the gym just like you used to do. But if you want to join in the conversation, we're doing these every other week, same bat time, same bat channel on our PreSales Collective channel at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. GMT, every other Tuesday. And so you can come join the Q&A, but it's still a podcast. We're going to continue to have guests on it, but for the first time, we're going to have two co-hosts, you and me, interviewing the guests, which I think is going to be very, very exciting. Matthew, I don't know how you've been feeling kind of leading up to this show relaunching.
I've been very excited about this, and you're totally right. This identity crisis, I think, is fun for us, but I'm already kind of trying to hold back my laughter at some of the comments that I'm seeing, which is, I think, a challenge that I was not anticipating. What I did look forward to was, all right, I've got to turn up the hosting. I've got to learn about this. And like a true SE, over the Christmas break, I went and I found some podcasts that have resonated with me. I listened to them and I thought, okay, what do these hosts do that I'm enjoying? So hopefully you'll see maybe a couple of flavors of different hosts. I'm not going to do any accents. That's actually one of my 2025 resolutions, to not do accents.
To not do accents.
Not do accents. We'll see how far I get with that. But yeah, I think it's really exciting. And I can't wait, honestly, for some of these guests to come on, because we should be able to have a really relaxed conversation, hopefully deliver the same amount of value that we've always been able to, but also let people have the chance to be involved as well.
And on that note of things we're going to be doing this year, let's kick this off now. Matthew, what have you been listening to?
Wow, what have I been listening to? So one of them was really interesting that my wife put me on, and it's one of these call-in advice podcasts. Oh, it's called Perfect Person by someone named Miles Bonsignor, if I got that name right. It's a call-in advice podcast. And the episode that I spent a lot of time listening to over Christmas was about, it was a listener calling in who was hosting a charity event, and she wanted to have a horse named after her because she was the host. And so then they talked about what are the ways you can influence a horse to be named after her. And it was kind of like, for me, listening to a sales pitch. I mean, a lot of what was happening was kind of out of this world and zany. But at the end of the day, it was an exchange of value. What do I have that you need? What do you have that I need? And how can we convince each other to meet there? So I spent a lot of time listening to that podcast. And if anything else, I also watched the Sabrina Carpenter holiday special on Netflix. So I spent a lot of time listening to Sabrina Carpenter. Those are my two from the holidays.
Very cool.
What have you been listening to, Jack?
It's one of those things. I'm going to mention it, but I feel like most people who listen to podcasts already know about this show. But for whatever reason, I hadn't been listening to it. It's A Bit of Optimism. It's Simon Sinek's podcast. I actually don't know if that's the name of the podcast. His company's, maybe it is A Bit of Optimism. I don't know, but it's Simon Sinek's podcast. And I listened to it because I saw a clip on LinkedIn where he was interviewing Trevor Noah. And it was really interesting because it wasn't what you're thinking if you listen to that episode. It wasn't Trevor Noah being his comedian. It was him just explaining a little bit about connections with people. And one thing that he had talked about was why small talk matters and why it's important is because it creates this common connection point that we have where we can all agree on the weather. This weather's terrible is actually the example he used, right? And when you do that, you then create a little bit more space before you dive into, so how are you going to vote this election? Was the example that he gave, right? It's using small talk to specifically create that point of we're all in this together. And that as much as all of us tend to hate small talk, it's important to not skip past that point. It's important to not skip past the way of creating that connection. I really loved it. So I've been going back through kind of cherry picking different episodes from that podcast, a show that has been on my list to check out. But it's one of those things when there's a popular podcast that people have talked about that you're like, I know I should get into. Usually, at least I do, I kind of procrastinate on starting it. So I've been enjoying digging through that one over the past couple of weeks when I've had the time.
Sounds like a great episode. So that's the 1-2 punch. How's the weather? Who are you voting for?
Yeah. That's if you couldn't think of two, like we can all agree that the weather sucks, but at least we have something to agree on first, I think was the direction. This is absolutely great. So the rest of this show is going to be the pre-sales podcast pre-launch with pre-sales live here is going to be, I think, some really good conversations. The guests that we have lined up, I'm already loving the topics that we're going to dive into. So you'll know going into every episode you're going to listen to, or even every pre-sales live show, you'll know what we're going to be talking about. That way, if you miss it, you know if it's worth checking out on the podcast and going back to. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
And we're going to be live every 2 weeks. How about that?
Every 2 weeks, roughly the same time. I'm sure there'll be a time where we have to actually shift it or adjust it, but we're going to try and stick to it.
Check this out. In 2 weeks, I'm going to be on the road. So it's going to be an on the road episode for me. Can't wait for that.
That'll be fun. In 2 weeks, yeah. In 2 weeks, I will be almost on the road. I'll be heading out to New York end of this month, but I'll still be home on Tuesday. I did want to talk about topics for this year because I think this is an important thing, because in talking about what's coming for the PreSales Collective and for pre-sales in 2025, there's the topics that I've been seeing as I've been talking to people that we're trying to build into all the content that we're doing. The podcast is going to explore, I think, a little bit beyond the bounds, more than like our webinars and our in-person events. But in general, the topics that we're seeing, pre-sales influence within the organization is a topic that I'm seeing a lot of interest in, whether that's how do we drive more influence, or how is the influence of pre-sales changing right now? Because what we do in pre-sales has been in flux. And so we'll be having a lot of conversations around what that means, how, especially if you lead a team, how do you drive that influence? How do you position your influence within your organization? And why is that important? What should we be doing for that? That's going to be a really important topic.
And it kind of goes hand in hand with the ever-changing nature of this role, right? And I think we are only seeing it become more important, but it by itself then invites in this identity crisis. And it's, are we still the same organization that we were if we're 10 people now as we were a year ago when we were 3 people, or if we're 100 people when last year we were 40 people? And what are the key deliverables that we need to be focusing on? And also, what are the things we need to be asking for? And that might shift. We might now have to be advocating for more headcount, and that needs to be approved by the CRO directly or something like that. And these things are constantly changing. I've been hearing that, at least here in the New York startup scene. I keep seeing companies get to this around, call it between 30 to 100 people in total. And that's when they start to invest in their pre-sales organizations, which I think is a lot earlier than it used to be. So everyone kind of knows that this role needs to exist, and it's going to be a different flavor, of course, everywhere. So what does influence look like when we are still trying to gather up as a whole how we unify?
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, the part that's weird about it is that we're being asked to do more all of a sudden in some instances. But if your organization or your team isn't being viewed as more than a services org to sellers, that can be a difficult thing to navigate. All of a sudden, now you're trying to say, no, we have an important voice to bring when that hasn't been something you've done before. So I think regardless of where you're at right now, I think this is an important conversation for us to continue to have throughout the year and to explore how to kind of in the right way maximize that influence. Kind of related to that is pre-sales career paths and organizational changes. I've been talking to a lot of people some who have moved into pre-sales leadership because they thought that was their only possible career path move. But there's more options available now. And so one, exploring what are the different ways you should be looking as a pre-sales professional to grow your career within pre-sales, as well as then as leaders, how do you set up those different career paths for your teams? How do you encourage your teams on what they should explore based upon what you know? That's going to be a topic that's going to be throughout at least one webinar that we've got planned for this first half of the year is going to be talking about that, which I think is a very important topic. It goes right along with the influence, but that's something I think we need to have a little bit more clarity around what it means to move into leadership, what it means to move into other alternate areas adjacent to pre-sales versus just thinking of a kind of more of a linear career path for people.
And this is a great time to be talking about that. January is the month of promotions and role changes. I can think of 3 role changes that I've seen already over the last couple of months that are maybe not what you expect. Sure, yeah, okay. Everyone knows that you can get promoted to be the leader of your pre-sales team, but what about product marketing? That seems to be a very popular one these days because I think similarly to solutions engineering, product marketing is going through a bit of a shift, genesis, whatever you want to call it too, because if there is another part of the organization that could say everyone interacts with us, I think product marketing is also kind of up there. And so these shared skill sets kind of like come together. So that's one that I've been seeing a lot of.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think there's been, also the number of product marketing people at companies has been growing as well. So even the scope of what they're doing is increasing because it used to be you had 1 or 2. And now when I go and look at marketing teams within organizations, they're a lot bigger now than they were even just a few years ago. And so, yeah, that's interesting. Aside from that, I also know that a lot of companies are exploring their utilization of customer success managers. Not that they're getting rid of the role, but the responsibility around CSMs who typically haven't been tied to any top line metrics.
Gasp.
I know, right? Who would imagine as we identify with this, like pre-sales, we're not normally tied to top line metrics either, but
gasp again. I can't
right?
live in that world.
This is part of the problem. While pre-sales is being evaluated under how do we measure it, same for CSMs. If we're suddenly tying a CSM to a retention metric or to an upsell metric or to something beyond a generic CSAT metric, does that mean their responsibilities have changed? What does that mean for their world? So I think everyone who is in front of the customer is seeing a little bit of that shift, which also means there's potentially more opportunity for your path, right? Between either one going into, but also potentially moving out to if it's something you're wanting to explore. So I think there's lots of conversations to be had around that.
Can't wait for that one, honestly. I'm going to come with a lot of little quick fire facts.
That's going to be something we're going to talk about, I'm sure, at summits, at webinars. We're going to have our whole career summit. So I'm sure this will come up in our career summit later this year. That's always a popular summit that we have. We're having again this year. I can't wait for these types of conversations around the career summit.
So hint, if you're an SE that's moved into product marketing, you're going to be getting a DM from me saying, please come and speak at this event.
Yes. Which actually transitions me into a topic. How do you get involved with the PreSales Collective is something that also we're going to be working on this next year. And one of the things is, hey, if you're someone who you're going, you know what, I actually have something to share, please let us know. Please do not assume we here at the PreSales Collective have everyone that we need, because I can tell you we do not. And so as you're seeing topics coming out, any things we're talking about, if you're like, you know what, I would love to join a webinar. I would love to join the podcast. If you want to be on the show, join Matthew and I to talk about something really specific, something that you've done, something you feel like other people might enjoy hearing my perspective. Please let us know. We need people who want to be on webinars, at summits, and at our conferences speaking. So we just need you to let us know. I'm actually going to be posting a blog post very soon about how to get involved. We're actually making some website changes that will make it easier for you to know how to get involved. But in short, the list, we need people to write a blog, join the podcast, join the webinars, become a regional community leader, as we've talked about earlier in the show, attend an event and submit a topic idea and join the Slack.
And I'll say this, equally important as to please jumping in, if you at all feel that inkling, that little scratch in your head that says, okay, I think I know what I'm talking about here. Don't assume that we know better, because you have an amazing experience and we want to hear about that. There's this person in fintech named Simon Taylor, and he writes about all things fintech. It's my industry. And one of the things that he says is there's no faster way to learn than being wrong on the internet. So if you hear Jack and me say something and you're like, no way, that doesn't match up with my experience at all, please, let's get into a conversation about it, because there are so many different things that we need to be able to reflect. And yeah, let's learn together.
And I love that, because it's absolutely right. Like, if you say something that is actually wrong, you will learn very quickly from everyone telling you. But I would also kind of amend that, or maybe not amend, let's say I'm going to append to that, is that I've posted things that I have been right about, right, quote unquote, right about, or that I wasn't wrong about. And the responses I got, the conversations I've had with people after me posting helped me to deepen my learning and understanding of that topic. And so whether you think you're right, whether you think you might not be right, or whether you think you might be wrong, you will get more out of it by presenting and bringing up your idea and sharing it than keeping it all to yourself. One way or the other, you're going to walk away knowing a lot more about it.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll even put myself out there, hand on my heart. This is an area where I need to grow. So please, especially if you hear me say things that you realize there needs to be more nuance to, please jump in, and I would love to hear from you. I think that that has come with my progression as an SE. You're kind of looked at to be the person who does have the answer. Capital T, capital A. But I think in a lot of cases, especially once we get into the nuances of what the profession is doing, and even once you get far enough down into a solution, there is no capital T, capital A, the answer. There's always nuance. There's always things you can add to it.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And that's the right way to think about it. For a lot of people as well, though, the one thing I do want to address is that I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, yes, but I have a feeling that if I share, no one's going to care about what I have to say, or I don't have enough experience. And I can tell you you're wrong. I have learned about how to get better at pre-sales from people who haven't even started yet, from people trying to break into pre-sales. I learned ideas from the way that they approach it. I learned from people who just started doing it, who have fresh eyes on our profession, which me having been doing it for over 10 years, I completely missed because I've been doing it for so long. And so no matter where you're at in your career, you have a perspective that is valuable. And you should know that. You don't need to have the years of experience in order to present an idea. Like, you got to get that out of your head. And it's imposter syndrome, but it's something we all struggle with. It's there in the back of my mind, some voice telling me someone at some point is going to question why I'm even doing this general manager role, PreSales Collective. Like, what gives me the right to be here doing this? But I don't know. What gives anyone the right to do anything? Just start doing it.
Yeah, 100%. I know you have two more topics that you want to talk about that we're going to touch on this year.
Yes. Two more topics that we're going to be talking through this year is leadership competencies. So what is it that you need to know how to do in order to be a leader within a company? Because as someone who moved from IC into leadership, I went within the same company and I had no idea what I needed to know. And so we're going to be talking a lot about those, because I'm sure there's a lot of new leaders who just are in that same boat. So that's something we're talking about. And then the last topic is going beyond the demo. So a lot of things are happening right now that are making it so that the demo part is not as important as it used to be. We've traditionally focused very heavily on being good demoers as solutions consultants, but that's becoming less in demand. The demo is something that has to happen, but when you go beyond the demo, even though that's the name of our newsletter, but that's a whole different topic, when you go beyond the demo is when you start to suddenly add value. And so we'll be talking a lot about, one, how you can get beyond the demo more quickly so that you can get to those value-adding things, and also what you need to do in order to excel at things that are beyond the demo in your role. So talking less this year, I think, with topics around how to do demos better and more around getting through the demo to get to the value-added things.
On that, there are actually a lot of demo curriculums that you can go through. There's lots to be said about public speaking. Just go watch some TED Talks. There are a lot of resources on that stuff. But what about the solutions specific things that go beyond the demo.
All great stuff for 2025, which I'm excited to talk about. It's going to be great, but I think that about wraps up our time here with at least the podcast portion of the episode. So Matthew, thank you so much for joining me as co-host of the show. This is going to be a great year. I'm really excited for this next phase of the Pre-Sales podcast, and we'll see everybody in future episodes.
Amazing. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you for listening to the Pre-Sales podcast. These shows are recorded live during our bi-weekly LinkedIn show called Pre-Sales Live and include a listener Q&A after each recording. To find information on the live show, head to presalescollective.com/podcast, follow the Pre-Sales Collective page on LinkedIn, or join the Pre-Sales Collective Slack. We have a dedicated channel for the Pre-Sales podcast where you can find more information and join in the conversation after the show. We'll see you next time.